Namaskar, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to News Night. In the show today, focus on the big summit between US President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The outcome has been mixed. We'll try and decode what strategic stability between the two nuclear power means, but that's the term used in the joint statement. Meanwhile, back home, cases of COVID-19 continue to decline across the country, even as administrations cautiously relax the restrictions. In an important update for students, Supreme Court has approved Class 12th evaluation criteria recommended by CBSE and CISCE. We'll find out what this criteria is, all that and more. First, the top stories. Supreme Court accepts CBSE formula to evaluate Class 12 students' performance. 30% weightage will be given to Class 10th marks, 30% to Class 11th marks and 40% to Class 12th marks obtained in unit test, midterm, pre-board exams. Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank says CBSE adopted this formula after extensive consultations with all stakeholders. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh inaugurates 12 projects of border roads organisation in Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir from Lakhimpur in Assam. Roads stretching across 382 kilometres built at a cost of Rs 1,661 crore. Kimpotin Road inaugurated will link central Arunachal with NH15. Defence Minister hails BRO for improved infrastructure and connectivity on borders with China. Home Minister MHA operationalizes National Helpline 155260 and reporting platform for preventing financial loss due to cyber fraud. Helpline and platform provides mechanism for persons cheated in cyber frauds to report such cases to prevent loss of their hard-earned money. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate customized crash course program for COVID frontline workers on Friday. 111 training centers across 26 states to become operational. Aim is to skill more than 1 lakh Corona warriors across the country. India progresses further in the fight against COVID-19. Active caseload declines to 8.26 lakhs. That's the lowest after 71 days. Number of people recovering from the disease outnumber new infections for the 35th straight day. Over 26.55 crore doses of vaccine administered so far. India calls for review of Pakistan bill relating to Kulbhushan Jadhav's right to appeal. Responding to Pakistan Foreign Minister's letter to top UN official on Kashmir issue, MEA says the reality of Jammu and Kashmir being an integral part of India cannot be changed. Russian President Vladimir Putin praises United States President Joe Biden's professionalism after returning home from their first meeting, says the ambience of the talks was friendly. Japan to ease COVID emergency measures in Tokyo and 8 other regions just over a month before delayed games. Restrictions to continue in Okinawa. Japan Prime Minister Suga urges Japanese to watch Olympics on TV to prevent the spread of infections. In a disappointment for Rafa fans, Rafael Nadal announces he won't participate in the upcoming Wimbledon and the Tokyo Olympics 2020, says they need to recuperate from demanding clay court season. And India to face New Zealand in the mega finals of ICC World Test Championship in Southampton from Friday. DD Sports 1.0 to air ICC WTC on DD Free Dish DTH. DD Free Dish users can also listen to live radio cricket commentary through All India Radio across the country. The Supreme Court has approved Class 12th evaluation criteria recommended by CBSE and CISCE, announcing its Class 12th assessment plan after board exams were cancelled due to COVID crisis. Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE, told the Supreme Court that students' performance from Class 10th onwards will be factored in to derive their final results. These final Class 12 results will be announced by July 31st. The details of the assessment formula in this report.
The Supreme Court on Thursday approved the evaluation criteria proposal based on past performance submitted by the Central Board of Secondary Education (CBSE) and the Council for the Indian School Certificate Examinations (CISCE) for Class 12th amid the pandemic situation. After the centre decided to cancel the board exams for 2021, the Apex Court had instructed the board to devise a strategy for the evaluation criteria for Class 12 students. The CBSE informed the top court that the Class 12th results will be decided based upon the students' performance in Class 10th, Class 11th and Class 12th midterm exams or pre-board exam results. According to the 30s to 40 assessment formula, 30% of students' marks in the best of 3 subjects in Class 10th, 30% of final theory marks in Class 11th and 40% of marks based on unit test, midterm or pre-board exams in Class 12th would be considered. The schools will have to provide Class 12th practical marks to the CBSE. The court asked the schools to compile the internal assessment marks of theory papers and marks of practical subjects and submit it to the board by 28th of June.
अब की बार बहुत विषम परिस्थितियां हमारे सामने हैं और विषम परिस्थितियां इस तरीके से हैं कि परीक्षा के बाद रिजल्ट निकलना चाहिए था, परीक्षाएं नहीं हो रही हैं और उसके बिना हमको रिजल्ट निकालना है। तो बच्चे का सही मूल्यांकन हो, सही स्थिति उसके बारे में हमको ज्ञात हो, इसलिए हम लोगों ने जो कमेटी बनी उन्होंने ये डिसाइड किया कि कक्षा 10, कक्षा 11 और कक्षा 12 बच्चे की जो परफॉर्मेंस है उस परफॉर्मेंस के बिहाफ पर हम कोई एक ऐसा क्राइटेरिया डेवलप करें जिससे कि उसका रिजल्ट लगभग उसी तरीके का निकल कर आ पाए कि यदि एग्ज़ाम होता और वो एग्ज़ाम में बैठता और उसके बाद उसका परीक्षाफल घोषित होता। जैसे ही हमारा रिजल्ट निकलेगा, रिजल्ट निकलने के बाद अगर कोई बच्चा सेटिस्फाइड नहीं है तो अब हम उसके लिए परीक्षा का रजिस्ट्रेशन शुरू कर देंगे कि जिससे बच्चों का रजिस्ट्रेशन शुरू हो जाए, जो बच्चे एग्ज़ाम देना चाहते हैं अगर सेटिस्फाइड नहीं है। और जैसे ही कोई कंड्यूसिव टाइम हमको मिलेगा, हम लोग प्रयास करेंगे कि जितनी जल्दी से जल्दी हो सकता है केंद्रों को, परीक्षा केंद्रों को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग को देखते हुए और दूसरे प्रयास करते हुए कोरोना को बचाने के लिए हम जल्दी से जल्दी उनका परीक्षा कराने का प्रयास करेंगे।
Union Education Minister Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank welcomed the Supreme Court's decision to approve the assessment criteria proposed by the CBSE. He tweeted, "Many thanks to the Supreme Court for approving the Class 12th exams assessment formula recommended by the CBSE after deliberated discussions. CBSE has adopted this formula after extensive consultations with all stakeholders, which is in the students' interest. Our government is committed to ensure bright future of students and protect their interests and that of all stakeholders related to education in every situation." Although the CISCE has in principle agreed to follow the same assessment formula for compiling Class 12th result, but it has also said that it would consider the pupils' average performance of past 6 years. Various state governments, teachers and teacher associations have welcomed this decision.
से भी जो बच्चों को आगे के उच्च शिक्षण संस्थानों में प्रवेश लेना होगा उससे आसानी मिलेगी।
There are approximately 21,271 schools in India and 220 schools in 28 foreign countries affiliated to CBSE. We are unable to conduct the examination all of a sudden because it is a large community. That is why central government took a good decision at the right time.
Students and their parents have welcomed the decision to assess students based on their past performance in view of the current corona pandemic situation.
अभी जो एक्चुअली सिनेरियो था हमारा मतलब उसके अकॉर्डिंग मेरे हिसाब से बेस्ट ऑप्शन यही था क्योंकि एग्जाम्स कंडक्ट करना बिल्कुल भी पॉसिबल नहीं था एंड क्योंकि 10th क्लास को बेस्ट ऑफ 3 का परसेंटेज दे रहे हैं सो ये एक बहुत ही मतलब अच्छी चीज़ थी।
बिल्कुल ठीक फॉर्मूला है, ये काफ़ी हद तक ये फॉर्मूला बिल्कुल सूट करता है इस बार के सिनेरियो को देखते हुए और मैं इस बात के लिए बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं उनका, हमारे शिक्षा मंत्री का, हमारे सीबीएसई टीम का, हमारी पूरी का बहुत अच्छा काम किया, ये अच्छी नीति बनाई। जैसा अभी माहौल चल रहा है उसके हिसाब से देखो टेस्ट भी नहीं हुए हैं, जो भी ये इन्होंने डिसीजन लिया ये वाला, ये बहुत अच्छा है और मैं बिल्कुल फेवर में हूँ उसके।
कोरोना काल में एक बहुत ऐसा निर्णय था जो सबको अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था, लेकिन जो फार्मूला निकल के आया है क्लास 10th, 11th, 12th का बहुत सही है और इसमें बच्चों के साथ न्याय होगा और उनके साथ हमको लगता है कि कोई ऐसी चीज़ नहीं होगी जिससे उनको आगे जाके एडमिशन में या फॉरेन में एडमिशन में किसी तरह की कोई प्रॉब्लम हो।
सरकार ने बहुत सोच कर, बहुत इसके बारे में इन्वेस्टिगेट करके और एक मीटिंग के बाद सारे प्रिंसिपल से और टीचर्स से सीबीएसई स्कूल के वो इस फैसले पर पहुँचे हैं। तो डेफिनेटली ये फैसला उनका बहुत सही है, क्योंकि उन्होंने एक देश हित और सबसे बड़े भविष्य जो देश के हैं स्टूडेंट्स के फेवर में इस डिसीजन को लिया है।
कोविड में इससे अच्छा हो नहीं सकता था, सरकार ने जो किया बहुत अच्छा है, हम उसका समर्थन करते हैं।
According to the CBSE, those students who are not satisfied with the present assessment formula mechanism can improve upon their marks by appearing in physical examinations, which would be held as soon as the pandemic situation normalizes. The board informed that it would release the assessment mark sheets by 31st of July. Further, the Supreme Court also asked the CBSE to devise an inbuilt mechanism for resolution of student grievances regarding marks obtained by them after the declaration of results. The next hearing on the matter will be on 21st of June. Vikas Sarthi's report, DD India.
And let's now take a look at the pandemic situation in the country. Active caseload has declined to 8.26 lakh. That is the lowest in 71 days. Number of people who are recovering from the disease are outnumbering new infections for the 35th straight day. Vaccination drive has also maintained steady pace. Over 26.5 crore doses of vaccines have been administered so far. Meanwhile, states are closely monitoring the progress while restrictions are relaxed.
Midweek, after many parts of India began unlocking, India's active caseload declined to 8,26,740, the lowest in 71 days. However, there was a marginal increase in the number of daily cases reported. In a snapshot, 67,208 new cases were reported in the last 24 hours. Daily recoveries outnumbered daily new cases for the 35th consecutive day. Recovery rate further increased to 95.93%. Daily positivity rate stands at 3.48%, less than 5% positivity for 10 consecutive days. India's cumulative vaccination coverage has exceeded 26.55 crores. Dr. Reddy's in a statement has said that the project launch of Russian COVID vaccine Sputnik V has now been extended to 9 other cities. Initially, it was launched only in Hyderabad. The new cities where Sputnik V will be available include Bengaluru, Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, Baddi, Kolhapur and Miri Allaguda. People cannot register for the Russian vaccine through the CoWIN portal yet, and the facility will be available only when it is commercially launched. The pilot launch is in the final leg and necessary arrangements are being made to ensure the availability of both doses. Once the pilot phase is completed, Dr. Reddy's will announce the commercial launch of Sputnik V. In Uttar Pradesh, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath reviewed the vaccination drive for street vendors. On Monday, he launched a special drive to vaccinate street vendors, bus drivers, e-rickshaw operators and three-wheeler drivers, among others.
जो 12 साल से छोटी उम्र के बच्चों के माता पिता हैं, उनके लिए अभिभावक स्पेशल चलाया जा रहा है। इन वैक्सीनेशन केंद्रों पर केवल छोटे बच्चों के माता पिता का ही वैक्सीनेशन होता है। इसी प्रकार सभी 75 जिलों में महिलाओं के लिए महिला स्पेशल वैक्सीनेशन सेंटर भी चलाए गए। गरीब तबके के लोग हैं, जैसे रिक्शा चलाने वाले, ठेला चलाने वाले या ई रिक्शा, ऑटो रिक्शा चलाने वाले, रेहड़ी पटरी पर दुकान लगाकर अपनी आजीविका चलाने वाले, उन लोगों के लिए विशेष टीकाकरण का अभियान चलाया गया है।
Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant said that the state will open up for tourism only after 100% administration of first dose of vaccines was achieved. He hoped this target would be met by July 30.
TTA जी के सभी लोग मुझे मिले थे, उन्होंने कुछ डिमांड्स उनके मेरे सामने रखे हैं, वो विचाराधीन हैं, उनके ऊपर हम सोच रहे हैं क्या करने का। उनकी डिमांड है कि टूरिज्म स्टार्ट करने के लिए जब तक हम वैक्सीनेशन का एटलीस्ट फर्स्ट डोज कंप्लीट न करें तब तक एट प्रेजेंट हम तो टूरिज्म स्टार्ट करने का कोई विचार नहीं है। 30 जुलाई तक हम हमारा फर्स्ट डोज कंप्लीट करने का टारगेट है। लोगों से बहुत अच्छा रिस्पॉन्स मिल रहा है, वो कंप्लीट करने के बाद ही सोचेंगे।
In Jammu and Kashmir, more than half a dozen panchayats of Udhampur district have completed 100% vaccination for the age group of above 45 years till date. The district administration is going all out to speed up the process in all 236 panchayats. In Kashira Panchayat, people refused to take the jab in the month of February, but a 90-year-old lady, Takri Devi, voluntarily took the lead and got herself vaccinated and became the vaccination ambassador of the panchayat. Thanks to her efforts and those of the Sarpanch, today 100% vaccination has been completed of the above 45-year population in the panchayat.
मैं इंजेक्शन लाया हूँ ठीक ठाक रही कि सारे लोग बाहर निकलना ते इंजेक्शन लान कोई तकलीफ नहीं होती है कोई कुछ नहीं होता ठीक ठाक रहते।
Madhya Pradesh reported less than 200 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. No new positive case was reported from 25 districts. Health Minister of the state said that testing was continuing at a rapid pace. He said that one case of a new type of Delta variant has been reported in the state.
CDC की एक रिपोर्ट में आया है कि भोपाल के एक जो केस है पॉजिटिव केस उसमें कुछ नया वेरिएंट मिला है, उसकी पूरी जांच की जा रही है और कांटेक्ट ट्रेसिंग हम कर रहे हैं कि वो जिनका सैंपल है उनके कांटेक्ट में आए लोग तो संक्रमित नहीं हैं और उसकी पूरी व्यवस्था कर रहे हैं। हमारी प्रायोरिटी यही है कि हम टेस्टिंग के माध्यम से लगातार कोरोना की गति को पकड़ने और उसको कम करने में लगे।
After the imposition of a 40-day COVID-19 lockdown, the Kerala government eased restrictions beginning on Thursday. However, the total weekend lockdown across the state will continue. Announcing the relaxations after assessing the state's COVID situation, Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan said that shops selling essential goods will remain open across the state from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. from Monday to Friday. Industrial and agricultural activities have been permitted in all local bodies and transportation facilities will be allowed for workers in these sectors. Public transportation has also begun from today. Karnataka is all set to begin the second phase of unlock from June 21. Hotel and tourism industry hopes to resume work as the industry has been the worst hit by the pandemic. Karnataka Tourism aims to vaccinate all the staff working in hotels and the industry. Nearly 3,500 workers have been given their first dose. Over 1.7 crore doses of vaccinations have been given in the state, and per day about 3 lakh people are getting vaccinated. Steps are being taken by the union government to ensure drug availability and treatment of mucormycosis. So far, 6.67 lakh vials of amphotericin B for patients have been made available to states and union territories and central health institutes, in addition to other drugs such as amphotericin deoxycholate and posaconazole being used for treatment of this disease. Government is continuously engaged with the manufacturers to resolve their issues related to raw materials. The MHA has also identified new sources of amphotericin B, liposomol, amphotericin B injections and alternative drugs. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, has said that it is unlikely that any future third wave of COVID by a prevailing COVID-19 variant would be disproportionately affecting children 2 years or older. Now, AIIMS study findings suggest that COVID seropositivity rate among children was high, comparable to adult population. Hence, it is unlikely that any future third wave by prevailing COVID-19 variant would be disproportionately affecting children of any particular age. The data collection period was from 15th of March 2021 to 10th of June 2021. Total available data was of 4,509 participants, of which less than 18 years were 700 and above 18 years were 3,809. The seroprevalence was 55.7% in less than 18 years age group and 63.5% in the above 18 years. Now on to a big story. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised US President Joe Biden's professionalism a day after the two world leaders held their much anticipated first meeting in Geneva. Biden described the meeting as good and positive, said his agenda is for the American people and not against Russia or anyone else. Putin, meanwhile, called the meet very constructive and said that they agreed to begin consultations on cybersecurity issues, added the respective ambassadors will return to their post. And meanwhile, the joint statement that was released talks about strategic stability and a promise never to wage a nuclear war.
The first summit meeting between US President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, held in serene settings of Geneva, was described by both parties as good and positive, but showed clear signs of stated disagreements and differences. The two leaders remained profoundly divided on issues ranging from cyber attacks to human rights.
It was important to meet in person, so there can be no mistake about or misrepresentations about what I wanted to communicate. I did what I came to do. Number one, identify areas of practical work our two countries can do to advance our mutual interest and also benefit the world. Two, communicate directly that the United States will respond to actions that impair our vital interest or those of our allies. And three, to clearly lay out our country's priorities and our values, so we heard it straight from me.
During the first such meeting since 2018, the two sides agreed to begin a dialogue on nuclear arms control. They also said they would return ambassadors to each other's capitals. The envoys were mutually withdrawn for consultations in March after the US accused Russia of meddling in the 2020 presidential election. The disagreements, however, persisted.
When I talked about the pipeline that cyber hit for $5 million, that ransomware hit in the United States, I looked at him and said, well, how would you feel if ransomware took on the pipelines from your oil fields? He said it would matter. This is not about just our self-interest.
Also, there was no hiding their differences on issues such as human rights, where Biden said the consequences for Russia would be devastating if jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny died in a Russian prison.
I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia. I'll go back to the same point. What do you think happens when he's saying it's not about hurting Navalny? There's all the stuff he says to rationalize the treatment of Navalny. And then he dies in prison. I pointed out to him that it matters a great deal when a country, in fact, and they asked me why I thought it was important to continue to have problems with the president of Syria. I said because there's a violation of international norm. It's called the Chemical Weapons Treaty. It can't be trusted. It's about trust. It's about their ability to influence other nations in a positive way. I don't have any problem with doing business with Russia as long as they do it based upon international norms.
President Putin said he saw a glimpse of hope for mutual trust with the United States after meeting Biden, but added that Washington's moves to exit arms treaties showed its unpredictability.
We act in line with existing threats, and I think for the situation of real stability, we should agree on rules of behavior with the West in all those fields we were mentioning. They are strategic stability, cyber security, resolving issues with regional conflicts. I think we are able to come to agreement on all of them. That is my impression after meeting with President Biden.
Putin also said the two sides agreed in principle to begin consultations on cybersecurity issues, though he denied US allegations that Russia was responsible for a spate of recent high-profile hacks against business and government agencies in the United States and around the globe. Bureau Report, DD India.
That brings us to the issue in focus this evening, Biden-Putin summit towards strategic stability. We'll try and decode the key aspects of the big meeting. Two eminent guests are joining me for this conversation. Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States, and Professor W.P.S. Sidhu, Center for Global Affairs, New York University. Good evening and welcome. Good evening to you, Ambassador Meera Shankar, and good morning to you, Professor Sidhu. Professor Sidhu, if I can begin with you, we see a display of mutual admiration but also skepticism when the two leaders met. What, according to you, were the key takeaways of this big meeting?
At one extreme was the 1961 meeting between President Kennedy and Khrushchev, which was an absolute disaster because within a year, the two were locked in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Perhaps the most successful meeting that we have seen between the two sides was the Reagan-Gorbachev summit in Reykjavik in 1986. So in that context, this particular meeting, I would say, falls in the middle of those two. It was certainly not a disaster like the 1961 meeting, but it certainly also did not have the bonhomie of 1986. It really was a meeting, a summit to draw the red lines of the two sides to say that this is what is our absolute vital interest, and this is where we should not be crossing each other. So that was number one. Number two, there's also recognition that you don't want the world's two biggest nuclear powers, which have more than 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal, to stumble into a nuclear conflict. And that's why you see the joint statement only referring to strategic stability and the need to renew that effort in that context as well. And number three, although that did not come out as clearly, was also to see where the two sides could actually try and work together. And here, cyber, even though there were accusations on both sides, to try and see if there is critical infrastructure which the two sides could agree on not to attack or make sure that there are no attacks, and 16 of them were listed as well. So I think those three important takeaways are what I would emphasize.
Right. Ambassador Meera Shankar, if we talk about points of convergence, there was reiteration of traditional wisdom. Nuclear wars cannot be won, therefore they must not be fought. How do you see this vision underlining the phrase strategic stability that seems to be in focus in the joint statement?
I think it's a positive step because during the last administration we saw the edifice of arms control agreements between US and Russia in the nuclear field, really coming apart. The INF treaty was scrapped. The New START treaty was not extended. And so I think it's important that the two sides are getting back to the issue of nuclear arms control. And they have already decided to extend the New START treaty till 2026. And I suppose what the new discussions will focus on will be, suspicions or grievances that both sides have had about the other side not being in compliance with the treaty, and also to see where further steps could be taken in terms of either nuclear arms reduction or improving nuclear risk reduction, which would be important. In terms of the other takeaways, well, you have the agreement to reposition ambassadors in each country because the ambassadors had been withdrawn in the wake of the US imposing sanctions, fresh sanctions on Russia, and allegations of intervention in the US presidential election. So that's a good step because there will now be a high-level communication channel between the two governments. And then the third area is to commence discussions on cybersecurity, where the effort might be, as Mr. Sidhu said, to outline certain critical infrastructure areas or critical areas where the two sides will not engage in cyber attacks against each other. Beyond this, I think it's important that both the leaders have come out of the summit saying that it was positive. It's not a transformative summit, but it's certainly one where, they're beginning work in a workmanlike way to set new rules of the road as President Biden said, and knowing that there are areas where they agree to disagree, but also areas where they could cooperate. Now, these are the three, decisions. But beyond this, I think they also discussed the possibility of working together on issues like climate change, or even Afghanistan, or the Arctic, which is a newfound area of tension or disagreement between the two. So I think all in all, it's been a positive summit, a good first step, and hopefully both sides will be able to build on this to reduce tensions and develop a more predictable and stable relationship.
Right, ma'am. And the diffusion of tensions would really premise on how they're able to deal with the disagreements. Professor Sidhu, high points of disagreement, cyber warfare, issue of human rights, and the way the conversation went. For every Alexei Navalny, there was a response about what about the Black Lives Matter protest. How do you see the way forward? Because there seemed to be a rather logjam on that, on these two particular aspects.
Yes, but I would still argue that many of those are sort of peripheral to the central issue of strategic stability, which is why the two sides very clearly focused on that, because there was a real fear that if this continued, they may actually stumble into war, and a nuclear war at that. But I think here you might even get a sense that the two sides are acquiescing that what is in the realm of domestic politics should be beyond the scope of the other country being able to have an intervention in that. So clearly, President Biden has used the human rights dimension as something, because that's what he spoke about with the NATO allies and the G7, so he couldn't obviously discard that. And that remains a central aspect of the Biden administration, approach as well. And I think President Putin's response to that was clearly to say that, look, we both have domestic, political concerns, issues, and challenges, and we should not necessarily let them impinge on our bilateral relationship. So those messages were conveyed. Whether they move forward, I think, will become clear in the kind of progress the two sides make on this slew of issues and discussions that they are likely to see.
Right. Professor Sidhu, on the point of having possibly averted a large-scale conflict, you mentioned the phrase red line, which was also oft repeated in the conversation. On the issue of Ukraine, for instance, Russia has clearly said that any sort of support by the NATO, or even a possibility of partnership within the NATO structure, could in fact symbolize crossing of that red line. On that front, how to what extent have the leaders, the countries, been able to avert a possible conflict?
I think it's the immediate step where they have kind of reduced the instant tension. Bringing back ambassadors is a good start to that, so that you at least open the lines of communication, which had clearly been shut down. Ukraine is clearly likely to remain an issue, by the way, both domestically but also vis-a-vis NATO, because domestically there are already members of the Republican Party who have said that Biden was not strong enough in his articulation of the Ukrainian concern in this summit. And also, then if you look at the NATO communique, it clearly still talks about Russia as a threat, but China as a challenge. So it makes a very clear distinction. And clearly, Ukraine still remains a flashpoint. And it really does remain to be seen how the two countries are able to resolve that, or at least come to some kind of an understanding of their differences over Ukraine.
Right. And Ambassador Meera Shankar, finally, for those of us sitting in India and watching this summit taking place, what is the significance? With the United States, a growing partnership, Russia, a traditional ally, what does it mean for us? What comes out of this
I think for India, this is an important summit because if tensions between the US and Russia are reduced and they are able to establish a working relationship, let's hope that they can go beyond that also. But that itself, I think, will be good for countries like India, which have been concerned about the growing tensions in the relationship and its downward spiral in recent years, because India would not like to choose between Russia and the US. We would like to have good relations with both.
Right.
And also, I think the American pressure on Russia in Ukraine, over Ukraine, has ended up pushing Russia closer to China, so that creates strategic dilemmas in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
I think, so all told for India, it's a positive if moving forward, the two countries are able to re-establish a working relationship and halt the downward slide.
Right. We'll have to wait and watch how this engagement translates into tangible outcomes. On that note, Ambassador Meera Shankar, Professor Sidhu, thanks very much for joining us on Newsnight and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch a crash course program for COVID-19 frontline workers across 111 training centers in 26 states. The program aims to upskill over 1 lakh COVID warriors across the country. The training will be imparted to them in a holistic manner, customized job role, home care support, medical equipment support, and much more.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, a great need was felt for trained personnel supporting doctors and nurses. To help in prevention of pandemic, a significant increase was seen in the demand for such skilled frontline workers in hospitals across the country.
हमारे डॉक्टर्स, हमारे हेल्थ वर्कर्स के इतने बड़ी परिश्रम से ही इस दबाव को संभालना संभव हुआ है.
In view of this demand, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch customized crash course program for COVID-19 frontline workers on Friday, which will include 111 training centers spread over 26 states. The program aims to skill and upskill over 1 lakh COVID warriors across the country. Training will be imparted to COVID warriors in 6 customized job roles, namely home care support, basic care support, advanced care support, emergency care support, sample collection support, and medical equipment support. The program has been designed as a special project under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0 with a total financial outlay of Rs 276 crores. It will create skilled non-medical healthcare workers to fill the present and future needs of manpower in the health sector.
हम सब ने मिलकर उच्च स्तरीय चिकित्सा क्षेत्र के लोगों के परामर्श से एक 6 प्रकार के कस्टमाइज क्रैश कोर्स तैयार किए. जो क्रैश कोर्स में 6 प्रकार के सहायकों को हम शॉर्ट टर्म ट्रेनिंग देंगे और उस ट्रेनिंग में हम सब उन्हें बाद में ऑन द जॉब ट्रेनिंग में भी उनको विभिन्न अस्पतालों में डिप्यूट करेंगे और उस दौरान उन्हें प्रोत्साहन के लिए स्टाइपेंड भी देंगे, उनके फूडिंग लॉजिंग की भी चिंता करेंगे.
Keeping in view the current and future needs of the country, lakhs of people are already getting trained in different skills under the skill development campaign of the central government. Jobs are also being provided to skilled workers after training. In the present situation, people will not only be benefited after getting trained as frontline workers, but the need of supporting staff in the healthcare sector will also be met. Shailendra Mishra's report, DD India, New Delhi.
Reinforcing Modi government's commitment to provide safe and secure digital payments ecosystem, the Union Home Ministry has made an important announcement, operationalized the National Helpline 155260 and reporting platform for preventing financial loss due to cyber fraud. The National Helpline and reporting platform provides a mechanism for persons cheated in cyber frauds to report such cases to prevent loss of their hard-earned money. The helpline was soft launched on April 1st, 2021 this year. The helpline 155260 and its reporting platform has been made operational by the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Centre under Ministry of Home Affairs with active support and cooperation from Reserve Bank of India, all major banks, payment banks, wallets and online merchants. The system is currently being utilized along with 155260, that's the number, helpline number by 7 states and union territories. Rollout in other states for pan-national coverage is underway to prevent the flow of money siphoned off by fraudsters. Since its soft launch in a short span of a couple of months, the helpline 155260 has been able to save more than rupees 1.85 crore of defrauded money from reaching the hands of fraudsters. The facility empowers both banks and the police by leveraging new age technologies for sharing online fraud-related information and taking action in almost real time. The loss of defrauded money in online cheating cases can be stopped by chasing the money trail and stopping its further flow before it is taken out of a digital ecosystem by the fraudster. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh dedicated to the nation 12 roads built by BRO in northern and eastern border areas. At an event organised in Lakhimpur district of Assam, Raksha Mantri inaugurated 20-kilometre long double-lane Kiman-Potin road along with 9 other roads in Arunachal Pradesh and 1 each in the union territories of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. The roads have been constructed under Arunik, Vartak, Brahmank, Udayak, Himang and Sampark projects of BRO. He said the development has eluded northeastern part of the country for a long time, but the way it is now being undertaken under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi is commendable. Rajnath Singh asserted that Northeast shares border with many countries and thus construction of these roads will greatly benefit the locals. The minister praised the work done by BRO during the last 7 years, saying that its budget to develop road projects and other infrastructure has been increased by almost 3 to 4 times.
जो हम विकास कर रहे हैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट रीजन का, मैं समझता हूं कि ये बहुत सारी समस्याओं का समाधान जो इस नॉर्थ ईस्ट रीजन की करने में हमको कामयाबी हासिल होगी। लेकिन जो सड़कों का निर्माण बॉर्डर रोड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने किया है, मैं बॉर्डर रोड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की अद्भुत क्षमता की तहे दिल से मैं प्रशंसा करता हूं।
A year has passed since the clash in Galwan Valley. Minister Rajnath Singh remembered the martyrs and hailed the exemplary valor and courage displayed by the soldiers in line of duty.
गलवान घाटी की घटना हुई है, लेकिन हमारे जवानों ने जिस शौर्य और पराक्रम का परिचय देते हुए अपनी शहादत दी है और भारत की सीमाओं की रक्षा की है, उसकी जितने भी प्रशंसा की जाए कम है। आज अपनी शहादत देने वाले ऐसे सारे वीर जवानों की स्मृति को मैं नमन करता हूं।
It has been more than a year that the Indian and the Chinese PLA engaged in a violent standoff at the LAC in Ladakh. Since then, there has been massive mobilization by the Indian Army and rapid development of infrastructure. My colleague Nandita Dagar gets us more.
1 year since Galwan, and India and China have both dug in their heels, and despite the disengagement at Pangongso, the standoff at 4 friction points of Depsang, Gogra, Hot Springs and Demchok continues. Building better road connectivity for quick mobilization of troops and equipment are some of the key areas that the Indian Army has focused on to be prepared to face Chinese belligerence in Ladakh again. The big challenge for the Indian Army was to ensure a smooth deployment of the enhanced numbers through winter. Within the last 11 months, military engineers have created accommodation and facilities for the troops that were planned to have been built in the next 5 years.
जो प्रोजेक्ट्स बने हैं, इसमें जैसा मैंने कहा विकास तो होगा ही, लेकिन सुरक्षा की दृष्टि से भी इन सड़कों का एक बहुत बड़ा महत्व है। भारत का जहां तक प्रश्न है, इसमें कहीं दो मत नहीं है। हम तो शांति के पुजारी हैं, हम तो शांति चाहते हैं। हमने कभी एग्रेशन भारत की तरफ से कहीं भी नहीं होने दिया है, दुनिया के किसी देश के साथ, चाहे हमारे पड़ोसी हो चाहे कोई भी हो, एग्रेशन हमने कभी नहीं दिखाया है। लेकिन भारत के अंदर वह कुवत है कि यदि कोई एग्रेशन दिखाएगा तो हम उसका मुंहतोड़ जवाब देना भी जानते हैं। यह भारत की हमारी यह ताकत भी।
The accommodation for troops built to withstand the severe cold and wind chill factor includes fast erectable modular shelters. The state-of-the-art habitat have integrated arrangements for electricity, water, heating facilities, health and hygiene. The biggest achievement has been the infrastructure, as road connectivity to all the forward locations have been improved. The Zojila Pass, Umlingla, Marsmikla and Khardungla, they have been kept open for troop movements throughout the year. The roads, bridges and tunnels have helped to keep up the supplies at the forward locations throughout the year and provided us the capability to deploy more troops in no time. The Indian Army has also carried out rebalancing or reorientation towards the northern borders by strengthening its deployments in Ladakh as well as the entire LAC or line of actual control. In New Delhi, this is Nandita Dagar for DD News.
India on Thursday called upon Pakistan to comply with the judgment of International Court of Justice in letter and spirit in the Kulbhushan Jadhav's case. Reacting to the Pakistan National Assembly passing the bill for providing the right to appeal to Jadhav, the MEA spokesperson called upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address the shortcomings in the ICJ Bill 2020.
We have seen the news reports relating to the Review and Reconsideration Bill 2020 that has been passed by the National Assembly of Pakistan. The bill codifies into law the earlier ordinance, frankly with all its shortcomings. It does not create a machinery to facilitate effective review and reconsideration of Sri Jadhav's case, as mandated by the judgment of the International Court of Justice. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address the shortcomings in the bill, to comply with the judgment of the ICJ in letter and spirit.
And taking a dig at Pakistan, Ministry of External Affairs on Thursday said the reality of Jammu and Kashmir being an integral part of India cannot be changed and cross-border terrorism is unacceptable. Reacting to Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's letter to top UN officials highlighting the Kashmir issue, MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said no amount of justification can make terrorism acceptable.
The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. No amount of questioning can change this reality. Also, cross-border terrorism is unacceptable, and no amount of justification can make it acceptable.
Union Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar in a tweet message has said that Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has, by amending the Cable Television Network Rules 1994, developed a statutory mechanism to redress citizens' grievances and complaints against programs of TV channels. He also added that MIB has decided to recognize the statutory body of TV channels under CTN rules. The central government has issued a notification amending the Cable Television Network Rules 1994, thereby providing a statutory mechanism for redressal of grievances, complaints of citizens relating to content broadcast by television channels in accordance with provisions of Cable Television Network Act 1995. A need was felt to lay down a statutory mechanism for strengthening the grievance redressal structure. Some broadcasters had also requested for giving legal recognition to their associations and bodies. The Supreme Court, in its order in the matter of Common Cause versus Union of India and others, had advised to frame appropriate rules to formalize the complaint redressal mechanism. In the aforementioned background, Cable Television Network rules have been amended to provide for this statutory mechanism, which would be transparent and benefit the citizens. At the same time, self-regulating bodies of broadcasters would be registered with the central government. At present, there are over 900 television channels which have been granted permission by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, all of which are required to comply with program and advertising code laid down under Cable Television Network Rules. The notification paves the way for a strong institutional system for redressing grievances while placing accountability and responsibility on the broadcasters and their self-regulating bodies. Let's now scan through some more news and updates from across the country. in National Roundup.
Tamil Nadu Chief Minister and DMK President M.K. Stalin met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi. This is Stalin's first visit to Delhi after taking oath as Tamil Nadu Chief Minister last month. West Bengal Governor Jagdeep Dhankad along with Sudesh Dhankad made a courtesy call to President Rajnath Singh and First Lady Savita Kovind at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Later in the evening, West Bengal Governor also called on Union Home Minister Amit Shah at his residence in New Delhi. All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, New Delhi, has decided to resume routine inpatient admissions and elective surgeries at its general and private wards and in all its centres with immediate effect. In its order, AIIMS New Delhi said that the decision has been taken in view of the decreased need of hospitalization of COVID-19 positive patients and also considering the relaxation of total curfew announced by the Delhi government. Former encounter specialist of Mumbai Police Pradeep Sharma, who was arrested in the Antilia terror scare case and Mansukh Hiran murder case, has been sent to NIA custody till June 28th. The NIA had arrested former encounter specialist of Mumbai Police Pradeep Sharma after conducting raid at his residence. Sharma is believed to be the mentor of former Assistant Police Inspector in Mumbai Police Sachin Vajhe. The Indian Coast Guard has rescued 16 people from a barge in a daredevil operation off Mumbai coast in the Arabian Sea. On receiving an SOS from barge MV Mangalam, which was reported aground off Revananda in Mumbai. The Central Bureau of Investigation has filed a new charge sheet against Mehul Choksi and 20 others in the Punjab National Bank scam case. The CBI has for the first time added destruction of evidence to the list of offences that Choksi has been accused of. Lok Janshakti Party MP Pashupati Kumar Paras was declared elected unopposed as the new national president of the party. The meeting held in Patna, Bihar was attended by 4 LJP MPs. No other contender filed nomination papers. The Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways have signed an MOU to build a new National Maritime Heritage Museum in Lothal, Gujarat. The National Maritime Heritage Complex, a world-class facility, will come up in the vicinity of the ASI site of Lothal, 80 kilometers from Ahmedabad, Gujarat.
Let's look at some international news and updates. Ethiopia is all set for national and regional parliamentary elections to be held on June 21st. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has said this will be the country's first free and fair polls after decades of repressive rule. But voting has been delayed in 110 out of 547 constituencies because of violent conflicts and logistical problems. Abiy's Prosperity Party remains the front-runner in a field of 46 parties vying for parliamentary seats. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani appealed to voters to set aside their grievances and take part in the presidential elections on Friday. A record number of people are expected to boycott due to economic hardship and frustrations with the hardline rule. Hardline Judiciary Chief Ibrahim Raisi and moderate former Central Bank Governor Abdul Nasir Hemati are the main contenders after the hardline Guardian Council disqualified several prominent candidates from running and others quit. Spain's Tourism Minister Reyes Maroto and South Korean President Moon Jae-in opened the Spain-South Korea Tourism Conference in Barcelona on Thursday to promote travel between the two countries. Both leaders said they hope to return tourism levels between the countries to the pre-pandemic times. They also addressed the deep and extensive bilateral relations, especially in the economic, commercial and investment fields. In sports, Rafael Nadal announced that he will not compete at this month's Wimbledon and the upcoming Tokyo Olympics. The 20-time Grand Slam winner said the 2-week gap between the French Open and Wimbledon was not enough time for him to recuperate after a demanding clay court season where he played in 5 tournaments. Wimbledon is scheduled to start on June 28th. He announced his decision on Twitter And he wrote, I have decided not to participate at this year's championship at Wimbledon and the Olympic Games in Tokyo. It's never an easy decision to take, but after listening to my body and discussing it with my team, I understand that it is the right decision. The goal is to prolong my career and continue to do what makes me happy, that is to compete at the highest level and keep fighting for those professional and personal goals at the maximum level of competition. Nadal made it to the semi-finals in the recently concluded French Open in Paris, losing to eventual winner Novak Djokovic last week. Nadal has won 2 gold medals at the Olympics in singles title in 2008 in Beijing and doubles gold in Rio 2016, where he was the flag bearer for Spain. Japan is all set to ease COVID emergency measures in Tokyo and 8 other regions just a month before the delayed games. However, restrictions will continue in Okinawa. The easing up will begin on 20th of June. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga called on the public to watch the upcoming Tokyo Olympics on television to avoid the spread of COVID-19 infections, as organizers debate whether to allow domestic spectators into the Olympic venues. Suga, speaking at a news conference to announce the lifting of some COVID restrictions in Tokyo and several other areas, said that the most important thing was to avoid rebound in number of infections. And India will clash with New Zealand in the mega finals of ICC World Test Championship in Southampton from Friday. Both the teams boast of a world-class pace bowling unit, but their head-to-head in ICC events and the overcast and cold conditions at the venue give New Zealand the edge in the finals.
The date of June 18th will be a historic day for the cricket calendar, as the first ever World Test Championship final will pit 2 of the world's best test sides, India and the New Zealand, at the RJS Bowl in Southampton. While New Zealand are coming from a fresh 1-0 win against hosts England in a 2-test series, the Indian team have been prepping up through regular training and an intra-squad match at the match venue. Both teams possess immense depth in their squads overall, consisting of some high-profile specialist batters and bowlers. While India boasts of the likes of Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Cheteshwar Pujara, Rishabh Pant and Jasprit Bumrah in their squad, New Zealand have an equally skilled squad consisting of skipper Kane Williamson, Neil Wagner, Tim Southee and Tom Latham. India were the number 1 team in the WTC table and not only dominated at home but also won big overseas series in this time frame. Their triumph in Australia in 2020-21, the biggest win of them all. India won 5 and lost just 1 of the 6 series they played in the inaugural WTC, but significantly the 1 loss came at the hands of New Zealand in what was a 2-0 drubbing at home. It was hoped that the 2-year league cycle would add greater context to the longest format, but its inaugural edition has been thrown in disarray by the COVID-19 pandemic. Sports Desk, DD India.
And with that, we conclude this edition of Newsnight. Namaskar.